purchasing wine is an emotional experience, and controlling people's emotions is more of the realm that you're going into, and that's storytelling. So I would say that I think if you are trying to pull a lever, pull a heartstring in someone, I think storytelling it sounds almost religious to be preaching storytelling. I think at the end of the day, that's what you want to do at the end of the day, is enjoy a great story. And if your bottle is a story you can look forward to, that's actually the most beautiful thing.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today in beautiful Southern California, about to have a conversation with the famed co-founder of Wine Folly, Madeline Puckette, depending how you say it. Hey, I want to just introduce something really quick. Along the road of this wine tasting and wine business, I've stumbled across so many inspiring stories of immigration to the U.S. that I started a new podcast. The first release is coming out in a few days, and that is called The Song of America, which is the title of a book by a man named George Mardikian, one of the famed restaurateurs of San Francisco in the 50s. I borrowed his name, of course, with the permission of his family, to start the show and start talking about some of these inspirational stories of people that have come to America with a dream and accomplished that dream, whether financial, political, social, or whatever your measure of success is. So have a listen to that coming out, but not why we are here to talk to Madeline. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Yeah.
You know, here's the first question I wrote on my iPad here. Who are you?
Who?
Okay. No, and I say it sort of tongue in cheek because Wine Folly, which is an incredible name for a wine education site, started in 2011. You just kind of burst onto the scene.
Yeah, I kind of did. I'd become a certified sommelier at that point. I was working in restaurants, and I felt like there was a difference between my level of knowledge and the customer's level of knowledge. And I was like, what if there was more information on the internet that was fun to look up, because wine is fun. I think more people would like wine, and more people would know how to ask for what they want. And so that's why we started Wine Folly, was as an adventure into wine.
You know, let's dig right into that subject, because it's become, in my opinion, pertinent and controversial, because I think it's always been that way. In fact, this patch right here, which
so
is
cool.
from the 70s, is called Les Amis de Vin. As you would know, it means the friends of wine. And it was a wine education group throughout the country, 150 chapters. And if you owned a wine shop or a restaurant, you could join it and start your chapter. This is my father's chapter. And it was exactly that. But it was an experiential version of that, where you got to dinner for dinner, you got together and heard Robert Mondavi speak. So I think that this idea of wine education is critical for the ongoing support of our industry.
I couldn't agree more. And I think what happened was, when I was starting to create this content and write about wine and create visual infographics and maps and that kind of a thing, we hadn't really, wine writing or wine communication was the written word. It was in a book. It was in a magazine. There were actually some good wine blogs around at the time, but they weren't communicating in a way that was relevant to the everyday person. Like, what could you find at Trader Joe's or Safeway that is palatable and delicious and help me find the wine that I'm looking for? And so I kind of started writing about the things that were in everyone's sort of purview, so they had some kind of a way to get into wine. And I, as a graphic designer, I have a degree in fine art and actually music technology, so time-based editing and that kind of a thing. And I wasn't really a great writer, not at the time. And I was thinking, well, I know how to draw, and I can make visual, informational, graphical things and help people get into wine. So I launched a few infographics, and one we posted up on Facebook. And by the second day, we had figured out where we would get it printed. And we had a little eBay link to sell it as a poster because I had made it poster shaped, basically.
Wow.
And that was the start of from the brand, which had started as this like simple, fun thing to like, oh my goodness, people are actually willing to pay for this fun educational content. And that completely transformed what we were intending the business to be.
So do you think that enthusiasm in general has grown, or it's sort of relative to the generations? And we're all talking about millennials and Gen Zs and whatever letter we're on, that, there's a whole different propensity towards fine wine, and there's White Claw and those other nice things out there on the marketplace. And, but I'm wondering, do you see a relative increase in people that want to learn, that want to understand, that want to at least have a better experience when they go to a restaurant and look at a menu?
So I would classify myself as a millennial elder. Maybe I'm referencing a comedian, but that was my generation. Essentially, we're the millennial group. So we were the people who were putting all the things online. We were starting to do things online. We were living online, and the group past me, the Zs, the millennials, Gen Z, whatever you want to call them. These folks have grown up with the internet as always in the background. We were sort of this transitional generation that had phones that you would pick up and call people. And then we learned how to use the internet. And the early adopters, I was part of the early adopter group. I super nerded out about computers and technology and stuff because my dad was, he was an engineer. And this group sort of built the foundation of the internet, and the Zs came and they lived in it. This was their home. There wasn't a world without it. And so they used the internet in a very different way. And they use it as a connecting tool, as a discovery tool. And they don't, especially now with AI, there's not a need to think like a computer in order to find what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. You can just have a thought, and then answers or stuff will fly your way. Options will come your way. And it's this wealth of over information, actually. So you kind of try to find the groups that you love and are interested in, or that speak to you in a way that you can connect to. And so social media networks were really the rise after the basic internet, the social media networks. And I had the opportunity to hang out with a group of Gen Z people speaking at a wine conference, being frustrated with the amount of over explaining and too much. And it reminded me of the same kind of feelings that I felt when I was getting into wine, that, we can't talk about sweetness because it's not something that's deterministic in the wine. A Malbec isn't dry. It depends on what the winemaker does, Yeah,
right.
So now I'm trying to go, well, is it sweet or is it dry? I just want to buy a dry Malbec. How do I do that? And that's the kind of questions we're starting to see again, the kinds of sort of basic wine understanding, like how many calories does a glass of Sauvignon Blanc have in it? And that's an important question when you're young and you're concerned about, getting a hot date and having a good time out there in the world.
Wait, don't sell us old guys short. We're looking for, no, kidding.
Maybe you want a Sauvignon Blanc then, right, perhaps. Dry Sauvignon Blanc, with just 90 calories, a glass, if it's dry. So I would say that these onboarding questions are just as important, if not more important, and to take them seriously and legitimately, because the one thing these have over the millennials is they're smart. Well, millennials are smart too, but they really know how to seek information, and they have a good sense of what bad information is. So generally speaking, because they've grown up with a world of fake news, surrounded by fake news in every way, way, shape, or form. So they really want to get to the bottom of something, and they want a good summary of what that means. And they're trying to find their way into wine. At least this is my opinion. And I think brands that are connecting to the Zs are focusing on the hero's story. There's maybe an outstanding winemaker that's able to connect, of any age, right? That is authentic in who they are. And that is a strong connection piece for someone who's just getting into wine right now.
That's very interesting because, in my opinion, that really hasn't changed anything. Certainly the delivery of the information has changed radically, and this is more accessible. And I use AI every day to ask questions. So you're right. The baseline of where we get information from and, what I had to use. Now, I had a computer that had a operating system called CPM. Okay. It predates DOS and it still works. But the point is, the more that baseline grows and that your access to information grows and generationally, then you can process more and deal with more. And it's rather voluminous at this stage. But it doesn't seem to change the narrative that I'm seeking some experience, some story. I want to understand wine. And because there's this consumption drop right now, and there's this, non-alc awareness and low alc, and, man, we went to the fancy food show at Vegas last year, and one of the prevailing themes for beverages was non-alc, and most of it was undrinkable. But it is a blip, I think, in the radar of consumption. But what you said is right on it, but it hasn't really changed this idea that fine wine, the story of wine, is what we're seeking. It's just the delivery of it. And so I'm wondering, because of this consumption drop, if you think that there's a percentage less of people in the generation, Gen Zs or whatever generations are coming up, in the appreciation of it, or they're going to come around one of these days to this idea?
To be where the people are is maybe the number one thing to do, is to be where those conversations are happening, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram. Mm-hmm. To be present there and to be part of that community, I think, is very important. Because like you said, nothing's changed. Really, foundationally, nothing's changed. It's just the delivery method that has changed. And also the expectation of availability. I can go, and I think there's this model now where I can't go to the store and find what I'm looking for. I have to find it online now because it's so difficult you can't just walk out the door and go find the thing. So you have this audience that has a built-in expectation that DTC is how they get what they really want, which is very powerful for brands that build direct-to-consumer models.
Right.
And so that, I think that is maybe like you said, it's the same story always. We need some onboarding mechanisms. We need to answer these questions. We need to help people find what they love, and we need to love all the things that they love. I hear a lot of, in the fine wine market, this looking to what's popular and then everything else is garbage, right? And that's not true. Mm-hmm. There's excellent examples of sweet wines that are aged in Solaris for nearly 100 years, right? And you can buy them DTC for around $40 a bottle, which is obscene. That is an obscene value when you think of the work and the time that went into producing this exceptional wine with this exceptional story. So those stories are still valuable and valid. And I think we're going to find that potentially future generations are going to have a palate shift, right? They've grown up accessing kombucha and absolutely sugar-free, flavored sparkling waters. So they've grown up with different things as part of their purview than my generation and your generation. Mm-hmm. Like a kombucha would be like, ooh, this is bad.
I've had biodynamic wine. It tastes like kombucha.
Well, there you go. Who do you think it's for?
Well, I think that's again, it's not a novel thing anymore. Every generation's had that entree into the industry. My dad, stopped at Sutter Home in 1974 and talked to Bob Trincaro, and he didn't know what to do with this, a shiner of pink wine. And so I think every generation's had that. My dad's wine shop had Bartles and James and all those kinds of coolers. But it's interesting that you said about the DTC side, because I just had an interesting conversation this morning with a woman in Ireland who's working on European DTC. And when when we were running the shop, and it wasn't only 2 years ago, and we had Amazon, and I had put all this time and effort to pump my whole entire inventory, Grand Cru Burgundies, Bordeaux, classified growth, and all they bought from me on Amazon was Stella Rosa. And that's kind of interesting because what you're saying, it's kind of moving away from that, because you can't go to the store these days unless you have a fine wine shop in your neighborhood and find something interesting. And so now they're looking online finally to find interesting wines that they can share and tell a story about. But not that long ago, it was the type of buyer on Amazon that knew what they wanted. They were willing to pay me 30% more than what they could get it at Target for, because it was convenient. And what you're saying now is we can find Solera style, Madeiras and things online and know what they are and tell that story.
Yeah, you can use that as an opportunity. Suddenly just making the wine and giving it to your distributor is not enough. The product has to have this deep story associated to it in order to be considered great. We're used to looking at an incredible amount of metadata. Like when you look up a car, you're like, well, what's its 0 to 60? Like that's the thing. How many horsepower does it have? What's the, like all the little details. We are like meta information people. There's an expectation that that's there foundationally. And so when your wine goes to market, it needs to come with it all this media, like maybe even a video with the winemaker talking about what that vintage was like this year and what they was like making the wine. And then that gets shared out into the world, whether it's on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever. But that's your story. And you have, just like a winery has to continue to tell their story every single time someone walks in to their winery, that story is the same story that needs to get told continually to a digital first audience. And it's funny because I think I've been saying this for at least a decade. And it's only now starting to hit different because of this downturn in the sales. But the downturn of sales that we've seen is predominantly high volume wines. Mm-hmm. It's not the wines that we're thinking about, these independent producers. Independent producers are definitely having a difficult time right now, and I want to respect that that's a legitimate issue. But it's because this like large volume market of basic grocery store wine is not getting sold. We have like XX inventory and that kind of a thing. I think that we haven't seen a correction really in the US marketplace since wine started to become interesting. So not a correction like this. There certainly have been in changes that we've observed, but this is a real correction in the wine marketplace. And I think it's gotten everybody to like get a little bit more serious and step up and consider their marketing strategies a little bit more seriously, because you can't just go home and play in your vineyard anymore and make wine and have a great vintage and get it all sold. It's a challenge. It's looking a lot like other farming and agricultural industries right now, which suggests a surplus situation.
It's an interesting problem. You nailed it on the head. For one, if you start a winery, and I know how difficult that is, and how the margins suck and all that. You want it to make money, even if it's just a hobby. If you made your money as a surgeon or a government contractor and you went to Napa and you bought your chateau, eventually you hope that you can pick the grapes, ferment it, bottle it, and sell it and make money at it. And you're subject to the agricultural whims of the world. I mean, you have to be 5 years out minimum to think about having a vineyard. And how do you predict consumption in 5 years?
It's so
but maybe
slow.
what you had just identified would maybe think about this is if we're a boutique winery, a Bordeaux house, a Burgundy house, or a Napa house, we're trying to get our name told, we need to have this story out there. And we need to use DTC because on the other side of the fence, where the traditional methods of marketing were, the distributors, they're all consolidating. And the boutique guys that used to be able to handle some of these smaller brands and make the sales calls, they're not around anymore. They've been gobbled up, and now the Southern has a book, 2 inches thick, and RNDC, et cetera. And so you're sort of in this, and I think that you're talking about is this metamorphosis of the industry is changing right now because of these two sort of opposing forces of what we're doing.
Let's not forget how much regulation puts a damper on any good ideas.
Yeah, that's true.
and it's really tragic, if you're doing DTC as a winery, just to be able to ship your wine legally to a state where somebody bought it, you have to have like thousands and thousands of dollars of permits that you pay every year just to have the right to maybe sell 6 bottles in that district. So it's untenable for producers, independent producers, to try to actually make a difference, and they need to, and so therefore they have to work with interesting, creative retailer models that maybe solve that problem so they can get their path to market. I'm observing the meteoric rise of Last Bottle, right now, being like, everyone's scared about the market right now, but Last Bottle is booming, and they're like buying up everyone and everything right now. It seems like every other day in the news, there's something about an acquisition. So I'm like, look at who's being successful right now and learn something from them. I've seen some really fascinating beverage companies, and I'll reference Erica Ducey because she did the research and she's actually interviewed these people. And she found a wine brand that was basically in a juice box, and it was kind of a flavored, fun sort of cocktail beverage wine type of thing, and it great success in a juice box, because you can take that to a music show, no glass on the beach, that kind of a thing. So some of these brands are being creative in how they're packaging and their path to market in terms of their branding, that kind of a thing, or even the product itself. I think the juice box brand, depending on what state they're in, they'll either be malt-based, wine-based, or liquor-based because of the regulatory issues. And that's pretty clever. It's depressing, but it is pretty clever, and it is contributing to their success.
Let's delve into that. Depressing. What do you say that?
Well, I've looked at, I'm a nerd, so I've looked at all the regulation sort of around the TTB, and there's definitely a propensity to being a beer brand in terms of the taxing. I wish that all beverages were created equal in terms of, if your alcohol level was a certain alcohol level, you were taxed based on the alcohol level and not the type of alcohol that it is. But because beer is treated separately to wine is treated separately to spirits, they're taxed in totally different models, and I think it's not fair.
Do you think that's changing? Do you think that there's ever a chance, ever in the world, Free the Grapes and all the other organizations that have come through this on changing on this? And by the way, you've touched on so many subjects that I can't even decide which one to go with. But everybody's got this. Even Amazon, there was this whole idea that they were going to throw millions and millions of dollars at getting the feds to change their mind. I just don't see that bureaucracy changing relatively soon. Is not even a word, really.
If you wanted to do something in the next 4 years, might actually be the time. I've seen a lot of things go down in the last couple of days.
It's kind of nutty. It's funny. You're talking about the story and innovation. For one, so my romantic view of wine, and this didn't come around until later in my career in this industry. For me, it was business. I bought it for my dad. We taste on Tuesdays. Let's sell some wine. But this, visiting the world's regions of wine and having these conversations with amazing people, has sort of led me down this path of the romantic side of wine and the ethereal value of a glass of wine and the human value of a glass of wine. And so I'm sort of, when you said depressed at these ideas of fruit flavors and Tetra Paks and can linings, and that just takes away from the romantic side of wine. But certainly, kudos to the people that can sell millions of bottles or millions of Tetra Paks of wine.
Millions of Tetra Paks.
But, there was somebody on Facebook the other day posted that they were at Wine Paris and they were talking to this guy, and he had sold 24 million cans of some peach-flavored fermented grape juice. And I go, wow, that's, congratulations on the number. But, oh, my goodness, I guess that's the entry-level stuff, right? That's what we need.
I think you hit it on the head. We need some entry-level stuff for the kids. And we need to, and then they can get to the fine bottled wines with corks in them. But we all, I should say we all, there's 4 and 5 of us still romanticize bottles and this experience of wine. And we want to get into it, and we're very intimidated. It's a long path to learning. And where do we start? So where do we start? Investing in that right now is very exciting to me. And I have to say, I was worried that Wine Folly was going to become irrelevant. Everyone's already learned everything. And, around the time 2020, 2021 rolled around, I was like, there's so much information out there. Am I valid? Does it even matter if I keep doing this anymore? And I think it was like the beginning of this year, towards the end of last year, I saw a change that inspired me to be like, no, don't stop.
Congratulations.
Don't stop. This is a necessary thing. We have an entire generation of half of the Gen Z, some percentage of the Gen Z, I think it's less than half, is not even 21 yet in the United States. And that means they can't even legally drink. So we got a little bit of time.
Yeah,
we got
really
some work
good point.
to do.
And I think this transition, landing on the other side of this transition is going to require staying the course, because I don't think that the romanticism or the value of that glass of wine will ever change. It hasn't changed in thousands and thousands of years, and that every generation comes around, some later than others, to understand that, when I don't know about you, but I think about what I'm going to have when I get home, not what I'm going to eat, but what I want to drink. And it's not because of the 14% alcohol. It's because I want to feel something. And that's just from years and years of experience. And I think everybody has that. I had this interesting conversation yesterday. A guy named Chad Luddington, I don't know if you know who he is, complete academic on wine, incredible historian on wine. But he talked about a professor, and I forgot the university, that can articulate why our palate will grow after you start drinking Apothic Red or Josh, whatever you're drinking, and you get bored of that simple style, and you start to seek complexity, acid, balance, structure, all those things that we appreciate. And I wait for him to send me the article, because it's quantifiable change in your palate to lean towards that. I think that's part of what the value of a glass of wine is. So leading to go ahead.
But why did I start loving Riesling and now I love Riesling again? Was it always that
I'll have to read the article. I don't know.
I feel like you're right. Your palate does change. Absolutely.
Oh, my wife is my biggest critic. And when we got married, she drank, Gallo Rhine wine. And now I can't get, Syrah past her, because she knows immediately what I'm trying to fool her into, because I want her to appreciate those things. But no, it's Bordeaux varietal, man. That's what I have to serve.
Oh, no. You're stuck.
So let's go back to the marketing side of this, because I'm going to say something tongue in cheek, and it's kind of funny, actually. I was looking for an email I sent you in 2013. So you're only into this for 2 years at this point, and not sure where you were at in the cycle, but probably obviously the very beginning of learning to educate customers. And I said, maybe we can work together. And you wrote back, like what?
Oh my goodness.
And I don't remember if I responded. I was slammed at the time, and we were growing. 2000 at that time.
That's
We
hilarious.
were about to hit our biggest year a couple years later, and
Oh my gosh.
and it was
Yeah,
really funny.
I'm not very good at email. I try to stay
Well,
away from it.
it wasn't a
as
criticism. It was
much
just
as
a funny
possible.
comment. But
Like what?
this part of the industry now is what I think plagues a lot of people, and that's the content generation and the marketing of. And they're not marketeers; we're farmers, right? I mean, I'm not. I'm a horrible farmer, but in general, I start the wine business because I think I want to be a farmer, and I think I want to be in that lifestyle. And then now I have to go sell something, and this becomes more difficult. And I think that one of the differences between market, even back in 2011 when you started, though it was just emerging, certainly when I started in 1989, there were very quantifiable, definable campaigns. It wasn't a commitment to marketing. It was a campaign. I would mail 300,000 pieces of mail, wait for the results, refine that result, and then send out it again 3 times a year. I'd run an ad in the newspaper, and I'd put a promo code, and then they'd call, and I'd know how that new ad did. That was a campaign. But it's not that way anymore. It's a commitment to the strategy. And the benefit of social networks marketing and content marketing is you can start and stop anytime you want, but the moment you stop is the moment that people stop paying attention, and you can start up again without any penalty. But it's a commitment, not right. It's not you don't campaign things anymore.
You can still have campaigns, but you do need that baseline. It's kind of like going to the gym. You got to stay fit. So you're going to the gym and you're keeping that baseline health taken care of. That's your baseline content marketing. And so you got to be consistent. That's the secret. Whatever you're doing, you're consistent. But you need to add campaigns on top of that. So it is hard. It is hard. It is a huge ask. I think it is a big ask for sure.
Well, I think for small companies, the reason the Wine Month Club, I was fortunate enough to sell it. And speaking of last bottle, Alex was part of that conversation. Didn't land on his plate though, but with an on-staff digital designer, et cetera, like I told you, and the campaigns required and the commitments to have content all the time. And then one of the reasons my wife and I decided to sell after 35 years was, you said it already, she goes, I don't want to process 38 tax returns next quarter. So this is first quarter of 2023. March 31st was the end of it. And we're like, yeah, you're right. The overhead to carry everybody in this company for another 3 months and then have to process 38 tax returns to get through the regulations because we did our own compliance. And the overhead of these 3 marketeers, we didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel at that point. It had been a long, good run, so we just decided to move on. But this is hard. Those are just those 2 subjects alone for a small winery is ominous. That
is extremely ominous. Yeah. Yeah, you need a partner. You need a partner who can help you. Yeah, which is interesting because when we merged the company with Global Wine Database, I really wanted that technology, this database technology where you can be it's producer controlled wine information. It's a product information management system. So a winery can add their winery in, and then they can add their individual bottles of wine. And my hope was, or still is, because we're building it, we already have multiple region guides, is that if you learn about Bordeaux and you go to Pomerol, the Pomerol section, to learn about Pomerol, you can see wineries and wines from Pomerol. And if that producer continues to add their wines in every vintage, right, that's part of your work, they'll continue to show their current vintage of the wine as a discovery model, as a learning discovery model. And so that's the entire reason we have Wine Folly database now. It's the entire reason we started Wine Folly Plus, is that maybe a marketer needs to be the best at communicating wine. And then you have an opportunity to get in front of that audience. And that was my hope for the future, was something where I could get the details, the meta information about an area and see all the wineries on a map. Like that was my dream. Just show me all the wineries. I just want to see, and I don't want to be distracted by other things. I actually want to focus on what's there. Because maybe I'm having a glass of Pomerol right now, and I want to see where that winery is, and I want to see what other wineries are around it. Because maybe I want to buy more.
That's really interesting. You know, I did a video. I went to a tasting with, Don Schliff from Wine Warehouse. Used to be the wine warehouse. He's probably one of the great port collections in the world, top 5 anyway. And he does a tasting annually here in Los Angeles. And, the Sucklings come and the Del Cordy comes and all the famous people come. And I took a video of him opening a bottle of vintage port with his custom-made red hot tongs. An old guy standing in front of a noisy bar with no voiceover and no music. And I have over 4.5 million views on TikTok and like 1.5 million on Instagram.
That's awesome.
And of course, zero sales volume came from that. None of the, just an awareness. And I think this is part of the conversation, which was this overhead to producing this stuff. And then virality really doesn't mean anything except that people learn who you are and hopefully one day they buy something from you. But I'll tell you, I've only been worried a couple of times in my career of doing this when I saw a new club. One of them was when the Wall Street Journal Club started, and I knew they had backing, and it was Limestone, and that was going to be big, and they had the ability, they had a relationship with their theoretically with their financial clients. But the other one I thought was going to that I was a little concerned about starting when it started was the Wine Folly Club. Because we already had enough clubs in the world, and I thought, wow, she's got a database, and she's got people that are following her. And what did you see when you started a DTC company for wine that you didn't expect, or and I know didn't you relaunch it, or didn't you send it over to Wine?
We've always been doing it with a joint venture with a retail partner, so we didn't have to deal with the 38 tax returns, because that isn't, for our business, that was untenable. So we had always structured it where we would pick the wines and do all the wine education associated to each club. And was that essentially is the model. And the club is still really popular. It's interesting because why you join a club is it really needs to fit your price point, like your price point, and the wines that you want every month. I don't know. I felt like it was gonna really take off in a way that I was super excited for, and when it's still very popular, but it's not in the way that I was hoping. I was hoping for problems of finding enough wines, right? And finding enough good quality small producer wines to actually fulfill the club.
Yeah.
And when that didn't happen, I was like, well, this is not the model right now. This isn't what someone wants right now. They don't want to be carried along in the club. And maybe that's the change that's happened between my generation, which is a club generation, right? I started a wine club. My dad bought me a wine club when I was 21. 2 bottles would come in every month, and when I was going to college, and those were the fanciest wines that I ever put in, the fanciest anythings that I would put in my body in a month, because I was eating basically like brown rice and beans. And then
top
I would
ramen.
have these, top ramen and Cote de Rhone. And so like, it was really, it was an incredible experience. It helped pave the way and get me into wine, right? And so I thought that might be the same with the younger generation, but I'm not sure. Maybe they have enough information that they want to go and discover on their own and buy the things on their own and pick out what they want. And then you see the rise of the last bottle thing. And it's this idea, this storytelling they do for every wine is so incredible. It's so much detail, and you really become enamored with the wine even before you even think about it. Like it's just casual, and then you fall in love. And so there's something there with that. Hey, it's It's going to sell out. There's only this many. It's on a super sale. When it's gone, it's gone. There's this tension that gets built with this, like, I have to buy, otherwise I miss out. It's FOMO.
Yeah,
it's FOMO generation.
Those things have come and gone a lot of times. I'm glad they're doing well. I mean, Trader Joe's was founded on that same principle. Trader Joe's success was not only their foodstuffs, but their wine. A guy named Bob Burney used to buy for them, and they would tell you in the Fearless Flyer, we only have 2,000 bottles, and we got 20 stores. So you do the numbers, and it's going to be gone. The Wine of the Month Club, we peaked around 2014 or 15 or something, and I had close to 18,000 members.
Wow.
And that's unheard of really these days. On a month, this is monthly, not
just
quarterly or
finding
annually.
The wines.
But we had that problem. And since you're talking about segmentation of the people that are buying, we had that problem. I had to buy 1,500 cases of one red and about 900 cases of white in a price point that I could afford to sell for $12 or $13 a bottle. That became a problem. But it's also founded on the idea that there was always something around. And the other reason I got out was that idea was starting to thin out because there were the last bottles of the world and Wine Access and I forgot the other guy on the East Coast. They were buying up some of these allocations too and some of these odd lots. And so they're harder to find. And I was finding myself going into Europe for, $2 a liter stuff and $1 a liter stuff and just, not producing the wines that I really wanted to show the client. So the premise had changed considerably on what we were doing. But at that point, going by what you're saying, it's completely price point driven.
Yeah. And I think that was the problem is like, our club is $120 a month. It's big,
considerable.
It's a big, expense, and you do get high quality wines. But if we wanted it to scale, like the potential of going into this danger period, right now it's the right size where we can find really incredible stuff from small producers and put it in the club and be really stoked about it. But then it's not designed to scale, so it's not going to work. And so what do you do? Like you want to help people get into wines, and you want to give them examples of great wines to try that are in a price point that they can afford. And that's essentially what we were trying to do. The club, I think I'm not as excited about now since we've launched Wine Folly Plus. We've gotten so much more signal with that. It's an online platform. You log in, you access all of, we started selling posters. You access all of our infographics. You access all of our maps in great detail, super zooms level detail. So you can learn and discover these parts of the world. So right now it's already an incredible value at $100 a year, but we're continuing to grow that product. We have a product roadmap to continue to offer an additive features for Wine Folly Plus members. And, I thought that our wine club was going to grow at the rate that Wine Folly Plus is currently growing. I was expecting that people wanted, at the end of the day, because they would always ask, why don't you just include wine, right? Why don't you just include wine? And so we're like, all right, we'll do it. But I don't know that I need to touch wine. I don't know that that's what I'm supposed to do. I think my job is to touch everything but wine and get you right to the front door. And you can decide to go through that door and find what you actually want to buy through the education, through the agnostic education, that we offer. So
I think you're right on. I can't tell you how many people, how many I saw, particularly on the retail side. And I talk about an earlier part of our career and an early part of wine. I mean, Jim Barry used to come into my dad's wine shop all the time. So that's how long ago we've been doing this. But along the way, watching retailers see our success, and I tried retail. I've had probably 4 wine shops. None of them have done really anything of any consequence. I think one year I made some money. But we were good at DTC. We were good at marketing. I sent 33 million emails my last full year. I produced 300 promo codes and 300, graphics and 300 text for those graphics. And that's what we did. And sometimes, particularly in our industry, because of the rules and the regulations and the lousy margins, and I think that's one of the Last Bottle's success. Their margins are good. I know how he buys. They're really good because there's so much good quality distressed merchandise, not distressed in quality, distressed in availability.
Didn't we kind of have a distressed period in the 2004 to 2007, maybe 2008 period where wine was really affordable? There was a lot of stuff from Australia that was like, wow, for the price, it was really good. That's how I got into wine. That was the era that I got into wine. And you're like, oh God, that dates me. But like,
it's true though.
It was affordable.
It's true. Yeah.
So having affordable, good product is like the best onboarding mechanism.
True. And it's such an emotional buy. I was in the market the other day with one of my social networkers, not the other day, a little while ago, but a woman I know, not by first name, but she knows who I am in the neighborhood. I think I coached her kids in Little League kind of thing. And she actually said while we were doing some social network videos in the wine aisle at the supermarket. And I go, what are you looking for? She goes, something other than what I usually drink. And I go, what do you usually drink? She said, Rodney Strong. I said, well, but here's some stuff that's kind of like that, that's different, that you may want to try. And it's and she knows who I am. She knows I've been in this business for a long time. I sell wine and whatever. She left. And I think she came back later when I wasn't there because it's such an emotional purchase. Despite the fact that you're recommending the wines, to make that decision, it's so emotional. And all my best friends that know what I do will still sometimes kind of want to do what they want to do on their own, which is perfectly fine with me. But I think that's part of the headwinds to any subscription model, particularly in wine, is that acquisition cost gets so high because you're trying to find the person that's going to say, oh, I really respect what Madeline's opinion is of these wines. I'm going to try this. And, $120 isn't inexpensive. Last subject, because we're almost done here. We're at 47 minutes. There's a lot of lip service on the web right now from generations of people that haven't done this, that haven't cut their teeth on the mistakes we've made. And so some of the stuff I read about are really basic sales skills that I learned, at Xerox. And I'm like, this isn't new stuff you guys are talking about. But one of the conversations is innovation. And I had the professor of innovation on the show and still got no further along with the definition in our trade than I did on my own. But what does that mean to you? What would innovation in the wine trade mean to you?
Innovation is where you take something that's over here in some other market or industry or technology, and then you apply it to another industry, market, technology, community, whatever. That's innovation.
And in our industry, easy?
Well, the great thing about wine industry is that it is a little bit of a Luddite. So there's so many things you could borrow from other industries, technologies, in theory.
Yes, in theory.
Will it work? I think you kind of hit it on his head. Purchasing wine is an emotional experience, and controlling people's emotions is more of the realm that you're going into, and that's storytelling. So I would say that I think if you are trying to pull a lever, pull a heartstring in someone, I think storytelling it sounds almost religious to be preaching storytelling, but I think at the end of the day, that's what you want to do at the end of the day, is enjoy a great story. And if your bottle is a story that can, just like you said, you can look forward to, that's actually the most beautiful thing. So I used to put a lot of stock in information because we could make really cool things with information. And we certainly still need all of that information in order to direct people down the right avenue so they're walking down the road they want to be on, so to speak, in terms of wine style. But then when it comes time to picking, the story wins at the end of the day. If we're looking at the same price, same quality level, if we've got all those things, it's going to get 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, whatever it is.
Well, here's my quip. We know this much, at least on the furthest end of the spectrum of storytelling, which is the story is not, I got this for $5 on the internet. That's not a story. And so I was so anticipating this conversation because I've watched you grow, and it's amazing. And I think staying the course for Wine Folly is probably the best medicine. Things, the ship will right itself eventually. And if you're there to catch the growth of wine knowledge and the people that are interested in seeking that knowledge, you'll be in the right place. I know you have a lot to do today, a lot of content creation, and I do as well. Once I finished the studio, kind of got upended recently, but we're working on it. Such a pleasure to meet you virtually and have this conversation. It is, and we'll do it again, I hope, as things evolve, and Wine Folly Plus, which I'm going to check out, continues to evolve as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.